All right, all right. What is going on, review and preview fans? I wanted to start there and throw that in there at the end of the intro tonight, and we'll get into that right away after we introduce ourselves. My name is Tom Scavetta, joined alongside my co-host Noah Dog Dibler. Noah, watching that video going down the turnpike to Philadelphia, how are you feeling after last night, my friend?
I'm still surprised, man. Honestly, that was the best way I can describe it is I've seen the Falcons be on the opposite end of a lot of games like that. I haven't seen them be on the good end of games like that, where you have to have a miraculous comeback, come in clutch. A little bit of luck, obviously. The Eagles choked the game, but in the nicest way possible, Tom, as the kids say, IDGAF. Because I don't care about what the Eagles are messing up. All I care about is that this team got to win in a game they were not expected to win. And they're going to be underdogs again this week. But, I mean, to get a win like that should be a big momentum boost, hopefully, for the rest of the season. Snatching victory from the jaws of defeat, if you will. But I'm great, man. I will say both my college and NFL teams tried to give me heart attacks this weekend, which, for how big a guy I am is not something you want to have happen. But they won. That's all that matters at the end of the day. And I'm feeling good tonight. How are you feeling?
Win is a win. I'm feeling all right, other than my Giants being really, really bad. But overall, an awesome week of NFL football. A lot to dive into, a lot to talk about. First and foremost, folks, if you're new to the channel and want to catch more of the content here at Review and Preview Sports, there's our YouTube channel below, along with all of our other social media platforms on Instagram, YouTube. We're on the Anchor as well for our audio podcast, and you can hit a like and subscribe to this video here on Facebook. We'd really appreciate it. It helps out with the Facebook algorithms. Also, feel free to drop a comment, any questions you have throughout the course of the show. We'll give you another reminder about that a little bit later on, and we may have our buddy Jason coming back with us in a little bit for the NFL segment tonight. We'll see how his traveling is going, but we'll keep you updated. Without further ado, Noah, let's get into our college football Week 3 recap. Josh Lane saying, "Rise up."
What's up, Josh? My boy Josh Lane, fellow Falcons and UGA guy.
How are you, Josh? Coming from a Notre Dame fan, I'm very, very happy for UGA surviving Saturday night, getting that win. Noah, man, I was watching it with you. Brock Vandegrift, that old boy, almost pulled a fast one on you there. You must have been pretty nervous late in that game.
Yeah, to say the least, man. I was, not having a fun time, shall we say. I wasn't. Oh, okay. I can't say I wasn't surprised. I am a bit surprised it was that close, but I think Kirby after the game kind of explained it well. People look past Kentucky, especially because they got killed by South Carolina last week. But at the end of the day, it still is a road game in the SEC. Kentucky played their best game, in my opinion. Georgia played one of their worst games. And they still got the win at the end of the day. The first half was obviously not pretty, going in halftime 6-3. I thought Carson Beck, for most of this game, it was one of the worst games I've ever seen him play. And I like Carson Beck. I know you like Carson Beck as well, but it was definitely one of his worst showings. It took him until the second half to kind of get the run game going. Trevor Etienne started ripping off some huge runs in the second half. Maybe not, 50-yarders or anything, but he had a couple first down runs in the row that helped get our offense going. Dominic Lovett, I was impressed with him. I was surprised. This is the problem I have with Mike Bobo, right? And I know Mike Bobo is one of those guys as a UGA fan, you either really hate him, a lot of people really hate him, or you try and defend him. I've defended him a bit, but I can't really defend what he did a lot in this game. A lot of conservative pass plays down to the boundaries that even if they are complete, it's not a guarantee they will be complete. You're not going to get a lot of yards, maybe 5-6 yards. A bunch of predictable runs up the middles when Kentucky was stacking the box all night long, pretty much. It wasn't really until the second half, Tom, that UGA really started attacking the middle of the field, which, I mean, it's not rocket science. I don't know why coordinators try to make football more complex when it's really a very simple game. You attack the middle of the field, it opens up the rest of the field as well. It opens up the run game, open up play action. And when they started doing that, they weren't putting up 28 points second half or anything, but they were at least moving the ball, which, I mean, this was a pure defensive slugfest. Did a good job against Brock Vandagriff. Our pressure, I thought, was really strong in this game. And we got that touchdown on Branson Robinson. And, we just kind of held on pretty much. I will say, though, a lot of stupid penalties in this game. Holding penalties, big defensive holding penalty when he had a third down stop. Trevor Etienne, I think it was, had basically wrapped up the game with the first down. We got an offensive holding penalty that, extended the game, gave Kentucky the ball back. And look, you give them a Hail Mary chance, anything can happen. But they were able to luckily win the game. I understand why they dropped to number 2. I honestly thought they could have dropped further to like number 3 or 4, but they dropped number 2. Look, at the end of the day, the only poll that matters is the poll at the end of the year. Like you said, Tom, a win is a win. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. It wasn't pretty, wasn't impressive, but at the end of the day, you'll take an ugly win over an ugly loss any day of the week, and they got it done barely.
Completely agree with you. Josh says Kentucky played hard. Got to tip my hat to them or to him. Bobo, on the other hand, had his run plays, got a little too predictable, got to open up the playbook more.
Yep.
Agreed.
I agree.
Now, there was a lot of debate around this. Texas over Georgia for number 1. In my personal opinion, Noah, and you can tell me if you agree or not, this is going to be a week-by-week 1-2 flip-flop scenario with Georgia and Texas, I think, throughout the course of the season because they're towards the top of the SEC. Texas looked more impressive last week. Now, granted, they have the best backup quarterback in the nation, but like you said, Georgia struggled. Carson Beck made enough plays late to win the game. Questionable call on Malachi Starks there. I believe it was in the 3rd or 4th quarter. I forget what it was, but ultimately Texas ran over UTSA. And don't get me wrong, all due respect to the road runners, a G5 juggernaut over the past couple of years, they are not Kentucky.
Yeah.
They are not Kentucky. And quite frankly, Texas has been clicking on all cylinders this season, getting Isaiah Bond in the transfer portal for Quinn Ewers, bringing back, studs on that offensive line like Banks Jr., really beefing it up in front of them. Ethan Burke defensively, that group, Noah, I think are really, really scary. And for the first time in a long time, I think we could officially say Texas is back as far as like being where they were back in like 2005, 2006.
Yeah, I agree. And, I don't really think it's that big a surprise. I think it is to some people. I mean, it feels like people already forgot. This team was in the CFP last year. It was only 10 yards away against Washington from going to the title game. And, no disrespect to Washington, but I personally think Texas would have probably given Michigan a better game in that one than Washington did. And they obviously, I mean, granted, it's not the same Michigan team this year, but they did go into Ann Arbor. And, I mean, it wasn't even like they just scraped a win. It was just not even competitive. So I think that win, Tom, is probably the main reason that they put Texas over UGA, because other than that, neither of these teams are really. I mean, you could say Clemson, but Clemson, I don't know. I think that team is in decline. Personally, that offense does not look good. But I think this was the committee values the road win against Michigan more than a neutral site game or quote neutral site game in Atlanta over Clemson for Georgia. And the fact that Georgia, like we just said, had that struggle win, whereas Texas, and I know they haven't really played anybody remarkable yet, especially, they haven't really played top-tier SEC competition yet, but they haven't had a tight game at all. They've just gone in and ran everybody over pretty much. Quinn Ewers, whether it's Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning out there, I mean, they're running the football. Isaiah Bond looks phenomenal. I knew that would be a great transfer in for them, especially, taking a player from Alabama. That's always a bonus as well. But I understand why Texas is number 1. I wouldn't, I'm not surprised that UGA dropped. I'm not mad they dropped. Like I said, I actually thought they could have dropped a little bit more because I think teams like Alabama, obviously Ohio State, even Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee has looked ridiculous. Granted, again, they haven't really played anybody, but they've wiped the floor. I mean, Kent State, they were up like 65-0 or something in halftime, doing an onside kick up by 30. Josh says, as a UJ fan, Texas definitely deserves a spot for now. Team is firing all cylinders and stacked with talent. And the thing is, you can prove who's the better team in like 3 weeks because we play Texas. I think we have a bye week this week. Then we play, I think, Alabama and Auburn. I think we play Texas at that, but I'm not sure. You can prove who's the number 1 team then. I mean, I remember in 2022, the first CFP poll came out. they ranked Tennessee number 1. We played Tennessee at Athens. The very week after that, we destroyed them. You showed who was the number 1 team. That's all they have to do for that one.
Absolutely. Well put, Josh. And Brady Mangold saying Michigan finally make a quarterback change to Alex. I believe his last name is pronounced Orgi or Orgy. I'm trying to say that in a tongue-in-cheek type of way. But from what I've heard, working for CBS, it's Alex Orgy, the quarterback for Michigan, replacing Davis Warren, who threw 6 interceptions in just 3 games. Really never had a chance to succeed because Michigan just lost so much firepower from last season. And granted, one of their games was against Texas. They've struggled, but right now, Noah, it's all about the SEC. I mean, you got Alabama running over Wisconsin on the road. Jalen Milroe accounted for 5 touchdowns on Saturday. LSU escaping South Carolina on the road. I'm guessing after Georgia and Texas, where do you rank like that next group of 3 to 4 teams? Is in like Alabama, LSU, Tennessee?
So we can say Texas number 1, at least for right now.
Right.
UJ kind of is like number 2. I would put Alabama 3, just because even though they don't have Nick Saban anymore, I personally have more faith in Alabama in those big type of games than Tennessee. Like, I need to see, like, Nico Iamaleava looks phenomenal this season, but his best opponent this season was an NC State team, which, I mean, no disrespect, it was on the road, ACC opponent, but clearly NC State was just clearly overmatched in that game. It wasn't even a contest. I want to see, what we can do about that SEC schedule. So I probably put Tennessee at number 4, just barely behind Alabama. LSU is tough to rank. Well, hang on. Missouri's number 5. I mean, they're ranked, I think, number 6 last I checked, something like that. They've looked really good. It's just going to come down to Brady Cook. He kind of had a slow first half in that Boston College game, but kind of picked it up as the game went along. So they're probably number 5. Number 6, I've been impressed with South Carolina the last 2 weeks. I know they lost to LSU. They were terrible week 1 against Old Dominion, but they killed Kentucky. I guess you could put LSU number 6, and trying to think if there's anyone else that's really solid. I can think of a lot of bad teams. I mean, Florida, Mississippi State, Old Miss. Old Miss is up there as well. I probably put Old Miss just ahead of LSU.
How'd I forget about Old Miss?
But that top 7, man, that's a solid top 7. I mean, the only team that lost pretty much is LSU, and they played a rock-solid USC team. I think Miller Moss is an animal at quarterback. They just got to get some things cleaned up. That was a very sloppy. They needed a big comeback win against SC. A lot of penalties, a lot of turnovers, wiped out turnovers from penalties. I mean, that was a just ridiculous barn burner game. But I do think they're – I don't know if dark horse is the right term, but I do definitely think they're one of the more under-the-radar teams from that kind of second-tier SEC, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with you. Ole Miss is a team I forgot about. Jackson Dart, gunslinger.
Mm-hmm.
Josh says the expanded playoff tree is going to be very interesting this year with those 12 teams, seeing how much, obviously we know Paul Feinbaum is very SEC biased.
Yes.
To
say the least.
I want to see how many get in this new format. That'll really tell us where the state of the CFP is. In my personal opinion, Noah, I don't think it's going to change. I just think there's going to be more teams now. That's all it is. I think it's going to be, the same teams every year, almost half of them SEC teams. Personally, that's how I think it's going to go.
Well, I mean, if we look at I'm looking at the AP right now. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got 6 SEC teams in the top 7. You got LSU at number 16. They're not too far away.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I do think it'll probably be a thing where, conferences like the SEC and Big Ten will dominate the ranks. Obviously, you have the conference champs. But, look, my thing with I always supported expanding the 4-team, and it's not necessarily that I expect those lower seeds to win, like, constantly. It's just they need to have the chance. I don't think it was right that teams like that undefeated UCF or that Cincinnati team barely snuck in, UCF missed completely, at least give them the chance. And then if they get blown out, okay, it's whatever. But, you got to at least give them the opportunity to try. That was my thing. I do think with the 12 team, you're going to, teams like Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State, like, they're never going to miss the playoffs unless they just have an absolute disastrous season. Like, you can lose 2, maybe even 3 games and still make a 12-team playoff. Whereas last year, we saw it. Georgia loses 1 game by 3 points against Alabama SEC championship game. They miss. Florida State goes 13-0. They miss because Jaden Daniels got injured. I mean, that stuff like that is why I think it was evident that you needed to expand at least to 8. I'm surprised they did 12. I'm not upset about it, but I thought they would go to 8 first.
Totally. And there's a lot of questions to be answered about that. Now, my final question here before we get into our shots and chasers, obviously Quinn Ewers is hurt. The good news is he won't be out for long. Arch Manning will get at least 1 start coming up this weekend. Now, let me ask you, when Quinn Ewers comes back, is he guaranteed the starting job, in your opinion? I think the answer should be yes, but if Arch Manning improves upon what he did last week, I don't know, man. I mean, this is a generational talent. Both, like, what's crazy is these 2 quarterbacks both might be top 10 in the nation right now, and we just don't we can't prove it yet because Arch has, half a game, 3/4 of a game sample size. But I want to hear from you.
To me, Tom, people are making a controversy out of this one. To me, this is easy. I think when Quinn Ewers comes back healthy, he should easily be the starter. Because the thing is, well, number one, I don't really agree with, unless like a guy is out for like 2 months, I don't ever really think a guy should lose their job because of injury if they did nothing performance-wise to lose it. And that's my thing with Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers has dominated when he's been on the field. The only reason Arch Manning has entered the games, Tom, is because Texas is up by 35-plus points, and Quinn Ewers gets sat at halftime because, he and the offense just did such a flawless job out there that Arch Manning has come in the game. Now, obviously, the injury, is something to be concerned with, but if he's only missing a week, I think people are making a quarterback controversy where there really isn't one. Don't get me wrong. I think both these guys are, you could argue both are elite right now, which is crazy because a lot of college programs like, unfortunately, your Notre Dame Fighting Irish struggle to get even 1 elite quarterback. And these guys probably have 2 on their roster. It's a great problem to have, but I think for me, they got Arch Manning to be the guy in 2025. Quinn Ewers is the guy in 2024, and then he'll go to the draft. And, if Arch plays in less than 4 games, he could even get a red shirt. He'll still be a freshman next year. He can be the guy going forward. But just for this season, I think it's Quinn Ewers' team. Both of these guys were, number 1 quarterback prospects, 5-star, 1.000 ratings on all the, websites or whatever. They're not that far apart talent-wise, really. It's just I think the Manning name obviously has a little cachet to it, whereas Quinn Ewers is just Quinn Ewers. It's crazy to see a Manning that can actually run the ball instead of looking like a statue out there. But for me, it's no question Quinn Ewers. He's done nothing to lose his job.
I heard FSU benched DJU for Brock Glenn. I don't know if that's official, though. Is it official, or are they still teetering on that one?
I don't know. I didn't hear about that. I wouldn't be surprised. My God, my expectations for DJU weren't high, but holy crap, they're 0-3. They might even be 0-4. Don't they play Cal this weekend?
They do. And
Cal is undefeated, I'm pretty sure. So.
And it's a 1-point line. I forget which way it's falling. It might be falling Cal's way right now. But, man, Mike Norvell made some boneheaded comments as far as
yeah.
I know his name is Uiagalelei, but he gets called Ukulele when I'm talking about him because he's been trash since 2021. He goes, I am pleased the way he's preparing. I'm pleased with the things that he's doing. You see the moments where he's giving us a chance. He's giving us an opportunity to have big plays. I thought there were a lot of the reads and things that he needed to do and the position where he needed to put the ball that was positive.
The play calling is just, I don't say this lightly, Tom. In my opinion, from the 2 or so games I've seen of FSU this season, I watched the Georgia Tech one. I watched parts of the Boston College one.
Yeah.
And I think I watched parts of their last game as well. Their offense is so predictable and conservative. It honestly makes the New York Giants offense look dynamic and explosive by comparison. Like, that's how bad I think their offense is. They don't throw. DJ barely throws past the line of scrimmage, let alone downfield. They have no intermediate to deep passing game. I mean, all the statistics I've seen, like against Georgia Tech, where he had like negative yards in the throw. I don't even remember the term, air yards, something like that. 5 yards per completion or pretty much something like that. I didn't have high expectation for DJ because, like you said, I think he's been really bad for years. I thought he was respectable at Oregon State last year in a conference which isn't known for defense, but he still had a lot of boneheaded mistakes and turnovers. And he's taken those, modest expectations and somehow managed to fail them completely to where, people are calling for Brock Lynn and I don't remember the other guy's name. It's some really long sounding name. But, they have 2 4-stars there waiting in the wings. And, FSU is a team that you cannot start 0-3. Especially considering the teams they played. Like, they haven't played anyone that is elite. I mean, Boston College, I think, is solid. Georgia Tech has looked solid. I'm drawing a blank. Who was the third team, Tom?
Louisville.
Louisville is solid as well.
3-0, ranked.
Yeah, but, they haven't played a top 10 team or anything like that at all. And it's going to, they have a lot of quote-unquote favorable games on their schedule, but, I mean, like, can you favor them? I've seen FSU fans saying they expect to go 1-11.
Yeah, I don't think that bad, but definitely a bowl game is in question at this point.
For sure.
Quickly here, comments. Anthony says it's Quinn's team. Agreed with you there. Arch is going to start next year. He can't declare until next year anyway. So actually 2 years from now in 26. So he has 1 year left after this year before he can opt to go to the draft. Arch is the better talent, but Quinn earned his spot. Definitely agree. It's all about seniority. Quinn has earned his spot. Quickly here, let's get into our shots and chasers before we bring up Jason for our NFL segment of the night. First up, we have the Fighting Illini, Illinois, ranked number 24, coming in at 3-0, taking on Nebraska. This is a Friday night game. The Cornhuskers, head coached by Matt Rule, they're ranked number 22 in the country. Favored by 9. Noah, I know this one hits you a little bit here. Former UGA commit Dylan Raiola, acting like he's Patty Mahomes out there, running out with the headband, doing all the on-the-field glimmer stuff before the game. Who's taking this one, and what do you think of that?
Well, first of all, I'm not necessarily a fan of Dylan Raiola, obviously, because I'm not happy with the way he left. But I can't deny the guy is incredibly talented, which is why I was upset we couldn't keep him. I mean, the guy's a rocket arm. Obviously, we've seen he emulates Mahomes very well, which personally I don't have a problem with. I mean, we're at the age now. You got to think it's been 6 years since Mahomes debuted in the NFL pretty much, at least as a full-time starter. I mean, 11, 12-year-olds, at this point that are 17, 18, they grew up watching that guy. I mean, when I was 11 years old, I started watching the NFL. It was guys like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning. And now for guys like this, it's Mahomes, it's going to be Burrow, it's going to be Herbert. I think it's just shocking to people because of the generation gap. Like, it's weird to see kids are now growing up with guys like Mahomes. For us, when we grew up, in an older era where Mahomes, it only feels like he's been in for a few years and doesn't really seem, relevant to us in that manner. But I don't have an issue with that. As for the game itself, I think Luke Altmaier has been pretty solid for Illinois. Obviously, Raiola has been amazing as well. I really like Dante Dodal, running back for Nebraska. I think that guy's an absolute animal, averaging almost 6 yards per attempt. And this game is at Memorial Stadium, home game for Nebraska, Friday night, like you said. Line, at least on ESPN, Nebraska minus 8.5, over under 42.5. I think it will be a bit more defensive game, especially compared to what Nebraska has faced so far. I mean, what's their toughest opponent? Probably Colorado, and they dominated that game to their credit. Illinois did beat, I think, a respectable Kansas team 2 weeks ago by one possession. I'm going to pick Nebraska in this game. I think they have a bit more talent, especially offensively. I give the edge at quarterback as well to Nebraska. And it's a home game. I mean, that atmosphere is insane. Apologies to our boy Andy Hopper. I know he's a big Illinois guy, but I'm going to pick Nebraska to win this one 24-17.
Cornhuskers have not allowed more than 10 points in a game this season. You mentioned Dante Dowdle. He's really good, but Illinois defensively is also really good. Xavier Scott and Miles Scott, they've been great. Pat Bryant with 4 touchdown receptions. I like the combo of Luke Altmaier and Caden Fagan. In the backfield, Illinois is definitely covering this 9-point spread, in my personal opinion. I'm going to have Nebraska winning by a field goal here. I think Nebraska keeps it a little bit closer, old boy. Illinois keeps it a little bit closer. I think that defense is criminally underrated, although the Kansas win looks less impressive now after what happened to them again last week. I think it was against UNLV or some team like that they lost again. By the way, Jalen Daniels looked horrific in that game. Yeah. So we're 1 for 1 in picks thus far. We could spend a whole segment on Jalen Daniels alone. But next up, your favorite team, the Florida Gators, 1-2.
Oh my God.
That was clear sarcasm, folks. You can tell by Noah's hat. At Mississippi State, both teams are 1-2. Both teams are bottom feeders in the SEC. The Gators are favored on the road by 5.5 points, and Billy Napier has stated they will be using a 2-quarterback system between redshirt senior Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway. Noah, your thoughts on this, and why the hell could Florida be favored by 5.5 points? What's up, Michael?
There's my boy Mikey Bradley. He's a big Florida Gators fan. Tune in at the right time. To be honest, Tom, this might have been an interesting game to mark in preseason, but at this point, I don't even think this game, it's fair to label it as a mid-off. Like, this is like a trash-off, man, pretty much. I mean, obviously the issues with Florida, they got killed by Miami, and then they beat up on Stanford. Then they get killed again by A&M and their backup quarterback, Marcel Reed. But Mississippi State, man, one of the biggest surprises for me in week 3, Toledo Rockets, going in, I believe it was in Starkville as well. They didn't just beat Mississippi State. They absolutely took them to the woodshed, Tom. Dare I say it was a signature boat racing by the Toledo Rockets in that game. As for the quarterback situation, I mean, Billy Napier's seat has got to be, hotter than the sun at this point. The Fire Billy chants, fans, booing, flipping them off, which, I personally think is a bit extreme. I understand booing, but I don't think you have to take it that far against the guy. He's at least a nice guy. But it's not good enough for a team like Florida. The 2-quarterback system, I got to be honest, I hate it. I think it's impossible for these quarterbacks to get into a rhythm if you keep switching them out between drives and, in drives, between possessions, stuff like that. And both of these quarterbacks played poorly against A&M. I know Lagway is phenomenal, 5-star prospect. He's the future. He's the hope. He wasn't good against A&M either. I believe he threw 2 interceptions. Obviously, Graham Mertz was not good against them or Miami. He was terrible against Miami. But for Mississippi State, I mean, they've been a complete disaster as well. I think if I gun to my head, if I had to pick one, I think Florida has to have a response. They got to win. I mean, it can't get any worse. I believe it's on the road at Mississippi State, Tom. But they got to respond. They have more talent than Mississippi State. This is the most boring matchup possible, but I guess I'll go with Florida, maybe by 17-13, something like that. And this is going to be a bad game to watch, I feel.
Well, Josh says 2 quarterbacks means no quarterback. State by 10.
I hope he's right.
I like State by 7 here, Noah. Florida's coming off a 33-20 loss in the swamp to Texas A&M.
And it wasn't that close either. That touchdown was late.
No, it wasn't at all. So between Mertz and Lagway combined, they threw for less than 250 yards, and they threw 3 interceptions. Blake Shapen has looked solid this season. And then Kevin Coleman Jr. is a solid weapon for them in the receiving game. You would think Florida has an answer, right? But Mississippi State is like their level. I mean, maybe Florida is a little bit better, but at home, man, on the road, Florida seems all dysfunctional right now. I'm with Josh. I'm going to roll with State here in this one. To your pleasure, but probably against your way of thinking there. So we're 1 for 2.
Yeah. I would agree with you if Mississippi State, even if they had lost to Toledo, if it was at least close, but they got absolutely killed. So, like, I have no faith in either team. Like, I agree with you with Shapen. I did like him at Baylor, the little bit he played. I thought he was really good in that championship game a few years ago against, I believe, Oklahoma State. So I don't think it's impossible. I just think this game is just being complete, like, trash can fest pretty much. I don't think it's going to be a good watch at all. It's one of those, somebody has to win it. I might as well go with Florida just because I think they have more talent on the roster. I have no faith and conviction in that prediction, though. And like Mikey says, I mean, it's just who sucks more in this game, pretty much is how it's going to go for me.
Fair enough. Appreciate you, Michael, and everybody commenting tonight. Next up, USC, the number 11th ranked Trojans, headed by Miller Moss, Lincoln Riley, headed to Michigan. 18th ranked overall. Michigan 2-1 on the year. They lost to Texas. USC, welcome to the Big Ten. Favored on the road by 5.5 points. Early start time for them. Make it a quarterback change. Davis Warren out. Alex Orji in.
You know, I'm sorry, Michigan. I really am. You know, I was hoping you'd be a little bit better than this after, you know, what you guys were able to do last season, but they've just lost too much talent. I mean, like one of the comments mentioned earlier, I mean, Davis Warren's already been a benched for Alex Orji. They've had all 3 of their games at home, and they've not impressed in any of them. They got blown out by Texas. Yeah, Brad mentioned that one. Good call by him. They barely beat. I know the score says Fresno. They beat Fresno State by 20. It was not a 20-point game. Fresno State threw a pick 6 with like 3 minutes left at the Michigan 10-yard line. They could have made it a 1-possession game. They were not impressive in that game, especially offensively. And then they only beat Arkansas State by 10 points. I thought their offense was a little better, but that's not really saying much. Whereas on the other side, I think USC has looked really good, man. I got to be honest. I'm a big fan of Miller Moss. We haven't seen a ton of them. But, you know, Caleb Williams went the draft. He's getting his chance. 48-66 this season, 607 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was phenomenal against LSU, who I think is a solid team. You know, they got a really solid running back group led by Woody Marks, and I think their receivers are good as well. Their defense, I think, is improved. I thought they were respectable against the LSU team that definitely has solid weapons. You know, held them to 20 points. It was a tight game. You know, very competitive game as well. I just think Michigan has lost too much and their offense looks in disarray. So I don't know if I would have predicted this, you know, before the season, but just based off what I've seen this year, man, I got to go with USC in this one. I really do. I think I'll pick USC to win 28-20.
I'm with you here. At some point, I think Michigan has to get right. Maybe the quarterback change will help them. I mean, defensively, they're the much better team. Will Johnson, Mason Graham, they have guys, but so does USC. And the question is, like you said, can USC actually play defense? You know, and not for nothing. Like Michigan only beat, who was it, Arkansas State by 10 points.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not going to fly against USC. What have you done for me lately, Michigan? Not too much. Give me the Trojans here in this one. We're 2 for 3. All right, next up, we head down south to the ACC. Georgia Tech 3-1 at number 19, Louisville 2-0. The Ville is a 10-point favorite. Haynes King on the road again, going up against Tyler Shaw and that offense. You know, receiver transfer Noah Ja'Cory Brooks to Louisville. He looks solid. Talk to me here. Does Louisville stay perfect? Are they the class of the ACC right now? I mean, I know Miami's there, and they probably are the class. But outside of Miami, are they that number 2 team so far?
Oh, that's a tough one, Tom. I mean, I'm still not sure about Clemson. I still think, even though I don't think they're a great team, I think they're on the decline. I think because the ACC is, not as competitive as, a conference like the SEC or Big Ten, they might still be in that top three and compete the rest of the way. But look, I can't deny Louisville has looked really impressive, and I've actually been really impressed with Georgia Tech as well. I know they got killed by Syracuse, but they've had some good competitive wins. They finally have a passing game, which, Georgia Tech has been struggling to get for a long time now. Obviously, they can run the football. They got both the Haynes guys, Jamal Haynes at running back and Haynes King at quarterback. I think those two are playmakers. I also like Malik Rutherford at wide receiver. But, Tyler Shout and Ja'Cory Brooks, I mean, I really liked. He didn't play a ton in Alabama. He's kind of a little lower in the depth chart. But you got to remember, Tom, he's the guy that – I believe he's the guy that made that 4th and 29 or whatever catch against Auburn. He can make plays. So he's a great get for Louisville as well, I think. I'm probably going to pick Louisville just because it is a home game for them, I'm pretty sure. It'll be a close game. I think Georgia Tech has been really solid competitive this season. Could be a bit more of a defensive game than people expect. The over-under currently 57.5. I think it'd be a little bit of a slugfest in this one. So I'm going to pick Louisville to win this one 27-24.
Yeah, look, they won their first 2 games convincingly. Don't get me wrong. I love the way Jamal Haynes runs the football. He's a stud. He's a bruiser. I mean, we saw that in Dublin, in Ireland, when they beat Florida State. Haynes King has impressed me. I always knew he was solid, but he's sort of gone above expectations here too, which is good. But Georgia Tech going up against a ranked team on the road. If they beat Louisville here in this one, they deserve serious consideration for ACC championship game this year. As of right now, through the first 3 weeks, I know it's week 4, but obviously Georgia Tech played in week 0. I mean, they got to be up there outside of Miami. Clemson hasn't showed it yet. NC State has been awful. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm going Louisville here. I think this is a 7 to 10 point game. I think Georgia Tech hangs in there tough. I think ultimately the home crowd, the Cardinals defense, 3 players with 2 or more sacks, that takes over in the second half. Next up, we have 2 old boys at quarterback. Cam Rising.
Here, guys.
That's right. Cam Rising will play. 25 years old. That is correct. Cam Rising is in college, and he is 25 years old, playing college football. That is older than maybe a quarter of NFL quarterbacks. They're 3-0 on the road against Oklahoma State, number 14, headed by Alan Bowman, also old, 24 to be exact. Utah favored by 2 on the road. We saw Zach Wilson's younger brother get the win for the Utes last week in Cam Rising's absence. But my thing is this, Noah, right? And as we pick this game here, Cam Rising has to adapt to try to play to not get hurt, right? He plays very ruthlessly at times, and it's led to significant injuries for him. And Utah is a team with loads of potential. I would hate to see him go down again, because right now, if you're looking at the Big 12, these are the 2 teams right now. These are 2 of the best teams in the conference, and a lot of people have favored Utah to win it this year. If Rising plays that, but that's a big if.
Well, I will say, if we're talking about Big 12 contenders, a team that I would like to mention, Kansas State, blowing out Arizona last week at home, I'm pretty sure, 31-7. I think they're 3-0 as well. I think that's another team to keep an eye on in the Big 12. UCF and Arizona State are also undefeated, so, have to keep them in mind. But I do think these 2 teams are probably top 3 in the Big 12. Oklahoma State is the home team in this one. It's a tough call because, like you said with Cam Rising, he's got to get back in their rhythm because he's starting to develop an injury history. I mean, he was out pretty sure all of last year. It was always like, oh, he's going to come back this game. He's going to come back this game. And then they just kept pushing it back week after week until there were no more games. And I don't think he played all season. And if he did, it wasn't very much. I could be wrong. I don't remember. But like you said, he got another knock again. Alan Bowman, I think he's looked solid. 8 touchdowns with 2 picks, completing over 70% of his passes as well, I'm pretty sure. Ollie Gordon, he needs to get it going. I think he's an elite running back in college football, but he's averaging less than 4 yards per carry so far this season. This is a tough one. I think it's a really close game, but I'm probably just going to give a slight edge to Oklahoma State just because they are at home. And I haven't really seen anything to impress me by Utah because they played nobody, whereas at least with Oklahoma State, I saw them get, a pretty decent win against Arkansas, who I think is an underrated SEC team. In overtime, they're able to get that one, and then they blew out Tulsa last week. So give me Oklahoma State in this one, Tom. I'll go 27-21.
They arguably have the best running back in college football, too, with Ollie Gordon II averaging under 4 yards per game this year. He has been held. They have locked in on him like a spy. Alan Bowman is good, but he's also turnover prone. For me, Money Parks, that's a great name, by the way. Yeah, all NCAA name list there for me. Name team, I should say. And then Brant Huth at tight end. I mean, those two guys have to really be standouts for them. I think Utah's defense has done a really good job, especially last week. Van Fillinger and Connor O'Toole have been there. Noah, the Cowboys barely survived the Hogs, but then dominated Tulsa last week. They're kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde team for me right now. I know they're undefeated. I think you know where I'm going with this one.
Mm-hmm.
As long as Cam Rising plays the whole game, I think Utah is going to win this game.
Storm and Mormons.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Speaking of Mormons, we're staying right there. We're staying right there. BYU 3-0 hosting Kansas State, a full touchdown favorite. You just talked them up in the last game.
I did.
Avery Johnson at quarterback, destroying the inspirational team of 2023 in Arizona with Noah Fafita, Tretora McMillan. Talk to me here. Does Avery Johnson keep the wheels rolling?
I think so. And I will say I'm not surprised Kansas State blew out Arizona. I thought Arizona looked very disappointing the first 2 games. They gave up 39 to New Mexico, who's a very, let's put it realistically, very bad team. And then they played a FCS Arizona team. I don't remember exactly which one, and they only won 22-10. So I wasn't surprised. I mean, maybe I'm surprised that they blew them out. I thought that was impressive. Like you said, Avery Johnson looks like a stud so far. But I've also been impressed with BYU because they played SMU earlier this year, Tom, a game that they were underdogs in, I'm pretty sure, and they were able to beat them 18-15 in a solid game. And I thought Gary Bohannon would be their starter this year, but they've gone in a different direction in that one, so that's interesting to see. I think it'd be a close game. I mean, both these teams are undefeated. You can't look past either one. But Avery Johnson, I think, like you said, has looked really solid. This is a night game as well on ESPN. But on the other side, Ratzliff has thrown 3 interceptions this season, and he's completing barely, I think, 60% of his passes. I also love DJ Giddens, Kansas State running back. I think he's an absolute animal. Ratzliff is a dual threat, so I think if Kansas State, maybe puts a spy on him, respects the fact he can run the ball, I think that'll slow down the BYU defense as well. And plus, I mean, Kansas State's defense against Arizona, like you said, they have a top-level quarterback, and in my opinion, the best wide receiver in all of college football, and they held him to 7 points. You can't look past that. So I'm going to give Kansas State the edge of this one with, some hard-nosed football in this one. Some good defense, running the rock, Avery Johnson doing what he's got to do through the air. Give me Kansas State to win this one, 24-20.
Awesome. Good game. Yeah, BYU keeping it close. And sorry, Michael, I missed this comment before. Raiola wears 15, by the way, because of Tebow. Okay, very, very interesting and very cool, too. I'm sure Noah loves that as a Georgia boy.
Oh, yeah, man. You know it.
Kansas State's averaging 39 points per game. They're winning. And that's it. I mean, that's all I have to say. Look, DJ Giddens is really, really good. Austin Romaine and Brendan Mott defensively do a really, really fine job. And yeah, that's our picks of the week. I think we went 4 out of 6 the same way. I think we differed on 2 games. And ladies and gentlemen, those are our college football shots and chasers of the show. Without further ado, let's bring up our third co-host of the night, Jason. Sorry we kept you waiting back there. Noah and I, when we start talking college football, I mean, it's like eating 2 dogs and a steak, man. I mean, shit goes wild. But how are you doing?
I'm great, fellas. Got out of practice, I'm a little bit sore, but I'm ready to talk about football.
Yeah, welcome man. Back. Looking forward to it.
Welcome back. So we took a week off last week. I had to stay late in the office, so couldn't do a show. So this is our first show since week 1. Let's get right into things, folks. And if you have any comments for us throughout the second part of our show, feel free to drop them below. We'll be happy to answer them. Jason, you and I are 0-2. Noah's 1-1. But several teams are 2-0. Most notably, the Houston Texans, the Pittsburgh Steelers, LA Chargers, Minnesota Vikings, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, among others, Buffalo Bills as well. I'm probably missing 1 or 2 more. Who, in your opinion, is the most surprising 2-0 team and why? Jason, we will start with you.
I'm gonna start with the Saints. I think people were I'm not surprised, but I think as a general, people are surprised that they're 2-0 because ever since Drew Brees retired, they haven't really got back to that level yet of being like a powerhouse in the NFC South. But Derek Carr is playing great. Alvin Kamara is looking back like he's in 2019 form. And the defense is just ridiculous. Like they're getting to the quarterback like it's nothing. The secondary, I think, is one of the best in the league so far from what I've seen. The way they dominated Carolina week 1, I think they shut them out. In week 2, who they play this week?
Cowboys
just destroyed them. Made Dak look horrible. So yeah. I like what I'm seeing from the Saints. I honestly think the way things are shaking right now, they could. I mean, this is looking like outside of the Carolina, this is looking like a really tough division this year. So, even with the Falcons, like they're looking better than I expected. But for me, the 2-0 team that's surprising to me right now is the Saints, and I'm gonna stick with them to go probably win the division. To be honest with you.
Here's your buddy Jack with the comment, Jason. Saints will win the division this year.
Yeah, I agree.
Noah, do you know who that is, by the way?
I do not. Who is that?
That is my younger brother.
Oh, really? Gotcha.
You can tell by the hair, right? That we look exactly.
Oh yeah, man. I totally can't even split the difference.
What up, Jack? Appreciate you tuning in. Let's go Jets. Short week this week. Jets also 1-1. And we'll definitely see how they perform against the Patriots. Hopefully they get to 2-1 and would love to see them make the playoffs this year. Yeah. Noah, what about you? Who's most surprising in your opinion? Jason went with the Saints, a team in your division. That must hurt.
Well, I think it's a good call. I think, with the Saints, you've clearly seen that they fired Pete Carmichael at OC and brought in Clint Kubiak, and it's making a total difference to their play calls. I mean, they just look explosive. Derek Carr is probably I haven't looked at the odds, but he's got to be in the top 2 or 3 to the MVP odds right now with what he's been doing so far. I think it's a good choice. I've actually gone in a bit of a different direction. Now, this team, it's not that they don't have talent on their roster, but it's the fact that they had a completely uncertain quarterback situation and have started 2-0 anyway. And I've gone with the Minnesota Vikings on this one. Impressive win against the 49ers. I mean, they were really good against Brock Purdy, picking them off a few times. But the biggest surprise for me, man, Sam Darnold looks good. Like, this is a guy I've never had faith in the NFL, and I don't think a lot of people had. But that pass he threw to Justin Jefferson, I mean, I was watching Red Zone. I saw that. I'm like, oh, my God, what a play that was by Sam Darnold. And he looks, calm, composed back there. They have a great running game. Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler, phenomenal 1-2 so far, both averaging 5.5 yards per carry. Jalen Naylor has slotted in perfectly, in my opinion, as their kind of number 2 guy. They just got to get Jordan Addison back going. And if they can have those 3 out there, I think that's a really solid wide receiver trio. As long as, I haven't kept up with the news about JJ's injury. Hopefully it isn't too severe because that guy's an animal, obviously. But, if Sam Darnold, he doesn't have to break the bank or anything, but if he can just play respectable, which I definitely think he has been so far, I mean, to play a team like the 49ers, who, in my opinion, are the most complete team in the NFL, and you beat them, and honestly, that game wasn't even that close. I know it was 23-17. Vikings were basically in control of the whole game, and the 49ers just trying to play catch-up pretty much. I was really impressed with the Vikings, man, and I did pick them to beat the Giants, but the fact they blew them out like they did was impressive to me because I thought it'd be just a close competitive game between, 2 kind of middling teams. But they went in there and steamrolled you guys at home in those terrible Montreal Canadiens-looking jerseys, celebrating your 100th season. My God. But, yeah, the Vikings, man, big surprise for me with the way they killed the 49ers and the way Sam Darnold has looked.
Both great picks. Both great picks. Jack with a comment here. No, that is not the guy you're playing in fantasy this week, referring to Noah. That is not him. We'll get to the Jaguars in a moment, Jack. I'm going to go with the Vikings as well. We knew their defense was legit. Brian Flores' defense has been phenomenal, bringing over Andrew Van Ginkel from Miami, a guy that he's familiar with. Sam Darnold can ball in the right system. He's not a great NFL quarterback. I think he's a serviceable bridge type of quarterback, and that's what he's proven. I'm getting a couple head shakes and acknowledgement there. Look, yeah, it's definitely the Vikings because of what they've done offensively. Their offensive line, Ed Ingram is not tripping ankles this year. Darnold can move a little bit more than Kirk Cousins could. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings just because of the nature of beating the San Francisco 49ers. But, Jason, I also like your pick too because the Saints beat the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are regarded as a top 10 team in the NFL, and they don't look like one on Sunday. I don't hate to say it, but at the end of the day, the Saints looked really good. And if you're Dallas, it's, all right, are we lacking or are the Saints that team this year? I think that's a fair question to ask. Now, thoughts on the Jaguars, guys, if I may. They played the Browns. Tough match for them defensively. They looked bad. And week 1, they played, oh boy, who did they play week 1? Miami.
Yep.
Guys, the Jaguars are cursed. They're just a cursed franchise. They can't get over that hump, right? They got to 9-8 that one year. They backed into the playoffs. They won a game against the Chargers, but since then, Trevor Lawrence has been hot and cold under center. I think a lot of it too. Their offensive line, brothers think alike. Offensive line is a huge issue for this football team. Trevor Lawrence's film is a lot better than his numbers, and I know Noah might disagree with that, and that's okay. I personally think Lawrence is a top 10 to 12 quarterback, talent-wise, when playing at his best. Mm-hmm. However, he has not lived up to that expectation. He's getting paid way too much money for this team to be 0-2 right now. And what did they score even one touchdown last week, guys? I think they scored one. And that was it. And that comment there, I do agree with this comment.
Well, I know people think I hate Trevor Lawrence. I don't hate Trevor Lawrence. I just think when you're getting paid as much as he is now, you got to put up the numbers. He was not good last season. He was terrible in that playoff game against the Chargers, the season before that. I think he has a lot of talent. I think he can be elite. I don't think he is elite at this point. I agree the offensive line is horrible, but he's only completing 51% of his passes. Now, I will say it's obviously not all his fault. The Miami game, Travis Etienne fumbled on the goal line, probably would have put the game away. They fumble the ball, give the Dolphins life. They end up kicking a field goal. But man, the Jaguars defense is doing all they can, man. They give up 17 to an explosive Dolphins, or at least it was at that point considered an explosive Dolphins offense. And you hold the Browns to 18 as well, and you put up, 17 and 13 points in back-to-back games. They got to get it going, man. Like offensive line, Trevor Lawrence, the running game as well. Travis Etienne. People were saying, top 10 fantasy guy, elite running back, averaging 3.8 yards per carry. They got to get him going. Brian Thomas Jr., love that guy. He was a stud at LSU. In my opinion, he could be the third best receiver from this entire class. That's how underrated I think he is. He's been killing it. But, who's their second option? Who's their second big explosive threat? I mean, Gabe Davis is all right. I think is a solid possession receiver. But past that, I mean, Christian Kirk has 29 yards. Brenton Strange at tight end. I think he's all right, but it's nothing explosive to write home about. I think Evan Ingram, they need to get him back healthy because he was amazing last season for them. But he's been out. He only has one catch this season. So, I think defensively they're rock solid, but they got to get the offense going, man. I think they've been very disappointing.
Anything to add, Jason, to that?
He hit it right on the nose, I feel like. I mean, they really just gotta pick it up. They're a good team. Like they really don't have any issues. They're just not playing well, to say it straight how it is.
Absolutely. Now let me ask you this: they're 0-2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are they the team that's 0-2 to most likely turn their season around, or is it another team? Which team out of the 0-2 teams? Now, quickly here, guys, the 0-2 teams: the Jacksonville Jaguars, the New York Giants, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals. There's a lot of good 0-2 teams based off of previous seasons. That is, of course, Carolina Panthers. Should I dare say them?
No.
Jay, who do you got in this one?
I mean, I feel like an obvious answer would be like Cincinnati. I feel like they're probably the best 0-2 team there is right now. I really like how they played against the Chiefs. Honestly, in a game I thought that they were about to win. I think Burrow played pretty good against that defense, despite that O-line that's still struggling after all these years. He was getting rushed a lot. They were throwing a little bit of stunts at him, made him think, but he was doing his thing. Jamar Chase didn't get involved that much, but he was like the other guy, the new guy. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but it's like Eovas or something like that.
Eosavis.
Yeah. Burrow made him look good, giving him time to extend plays. And he just made a lot of plays, really. I think they're definitely going to be the ones to turn it around, especially to have a nail biter game against a team like the Chiefs like that. Yeah, I got the Bengals as a team.
Noah, what about you? Do you have the Bengals as well?
I think the Bengals are right up there. I think there's a few solid teams you could choose for this one. Just to be different, I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. I'm going to go with another AFC North team in the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Ravens, week one is basically, the last week of preseason. I mean, teams are just getting it going. They're playing the defending champs. It's a very close game. They lose pretty much by an inch because Isaiah Likely's barely out of bounds. And then they just have a total, complete choke job against the Raiders. I mean, I've been impressed with the Raiders. They've been much better and competitive than I thought they would be. I guess Antonio Pierce has those, boys playing pretty well. But their defense just totally collapsed in that game. In the final play, I don't know why Lamar Jackson decided to lateral. It looked like he could potentially score because there was a giant lane. I don't know how the Raiders defense let that happen. Looked like he had a giant lane and a blocker moving downfield as well. But then he pitched it, and obviously they lost that game. But I think they have a good chance to turn it around because, Lamar, I know he's kind of a polarizing guy, but at least in the regular season, he puts up good numbers. You got Derrick Henry. He's been, doing well. You have Justice Hill as the receiving back as well. I think Zay Flowers, very underrated wide receiver. Definitely flies on the radar for a lot of people. He's really solid. You got Likely, you got Mark Andrews. That's a solid 1-2. They can run a lot of 1-2 personnel with that as well, I think. My only major concern with their offense, who's their number 2 wide receiver? Rashad Bateman, but past that, Nelson Aguilar. Who can be that third guy out wide to kind of make a difference from? Defensively, they have talent, which is why I'm stunned that they completely choked away that Raiders game. I mean, Kyle Van Noy, I thought was a really good addition. I love David Ajabo. I thought he was really solid at Michigan. He flew under the radar because of Aiden Hutchinson. Michael Pierce as well is solid. My guy, obviously, my boy, former Georgia Bulldog, Roquan Smith. He's a beast. And Marlon Humphrey. They got talent, man. It's one thing to lose to Chiefs. You can't lose to the Raiders. They're not playing good enough. My boy Todd Monken is what OC, former Georgia guy as well. He's got to get it going. But I think they can. I think they're much better than what they've shown. I don't think it's very often they're going to blow games like they did against the Raiders. I think they can get it going. I still would say they're better than the Steelers and the Browns. Bengals is debatable. I think those are the top 2 teams in the division, which I know is funny to say because they're both 0-2. But, it's only 2 weeks in the season. I do think they can turn it around.
So I'm going to give you guys my top 4 and then narrow it down quickly. So I narrowed this down to 4. The Rams are number 4. They're just too decimated right now. Puka's out. Cooper's out. I mean, they're really struggling. Their offensive line is not good. Their defense is very subpar. And, guys, this is what happens when you trade a lot of draft capital for an old Georgia boy like Matthew Stafford.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't had a first-round draft pick since this year. Their first one since
2019.
That's a long time. That is a very, very long time to not be getting first-round talent integrated into your football team. So I can't go with them here. Just too many injuries. Jaguars, I could see them going 9-8 this year, but their strength of schedule is brutal. They're at Buffalo this week on Monday Night Football. They still got to play Houston twice. It's going to be an uphill battle for them. My top 2, obviously, both of you guys went a different direction. It's between the Bengals and the Ravens for me, and I went with the Bengals, and here's why. So I think the Bengals, due to their play last week and their strength of schedule coming up, should be at the top of this list. Also, they have the best O-line out of those teams, and their O-line is not good. That's to say the least. Jacksonville's O-line is horrendous. Baltimore's O-line has really declined. They've been good in the past, but I don't know how Patrick McCarry is still an NFL starter at right tackle. I honestly don't. He was the guy that lost in the playoff game a couple of years back when he was playing center. Why have they not moved on from him yet? Ravens may only win 10 games this year in the regular season and then be that team in the playoffs that gets really hot. But right now I'm going with Cincinnati because of the track record against the elites in the NFL. So that's my plus T. Higgins didn't play. And Joe Burrow finally has a really good tight end on this roster, and his name is Mike Gesicki. They have Mike Gesicki, and then they have Eric All, the rookie from Iowa, who's a really good blocking tight end who can help that offensive line. You get a lot of 12 personnel out there. I mean, we know Jamar Chase, the contract stuff, that's put aside for now. This is all media talk. I think Jamar Chase is re-signing after this season. I do, and that might be a minority opinion right now. But, I mean, it's week 2, guys. Week 18, it could be a much different story. I'm going to roll with Cincinnati here. I think if Mike Gesicki's still a free agent in your fantasy league, you should be going to pick him up immediately, especially after the game he had last week. So I like Cincinnati. All right. Now, last topic before we get into the shots and chasers. We're going to do 8 games this week. I added a bonus game because there's a lot of good games this upcoming week for the NFL. Out of all the injuries this week, this one was the worst. And I hate to put it this way, but of course, Damar Hamlin is the one to be the defender on this play. I mean, how – I don't even know how to put it into words. It's just sad. It's sad. I mean, you see Tua there just laying on the floor. I don't want to get too graphic, but it looked like he was having a medical event on the ground after, getting hit. And it was inadvertent from Damar Hamlin. That was just a routine tackle. Tua got concussed from a routine tackle. This is what? His third since 22 and his fourth in the last 5 years? I mean, it's time to retire. Right, guys? I mean, he's not going to, knowing who he is. He was placed on IR today. He's out for at least the next 4 games, but I don't know how you come back from this, man. I really don't. They just paid him a lot of money, though, $53 million. That's the devil's advocate side of it, right? He just got paid $53 million, and now he's going to retire. It looks real stupid by Miami to do that, knowing his medical history.
Yeah, I'll let him go first. Sorry.
The way I look at it, from Mike McDaniel and that Miami front office, you want to have a real conversation with him. You either convince him to think about his future, or they start spending some real money and draft capital on that offensive line to protect their quarterback. That's the only 2 options that I see that will keep him playing or keep him in a stable condition. Either just has that realization that it's time to hang it up, or the front office has to go all out to keep him protected. That's the only 2 things that I could see working out for him.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is so sad, but unfortunately it's not surprising. And, like you said, Tom, Tua and Damar Hamlin coming together and play. I mean, unfortunately, the football gods, there was just no way that something messed up wasn't going to happen from this. I am really sad for Tua. At the same time, I got to really question why did he do this? The game was over. They were down by 21. It was late third quarter. It was a 4th down. I know you want to get the first down. In my opinion, I think he had the first down anyway, and he was just going for extra yards. And then you lower your head, and like you said, I think he hit Damar Hamlin in the chest or something like that, kind of like the side/chest. Definitely not helmet to helmet or anything that to where you would expect a guy to get a concussion. It was just, the fact he has the pre-existing history. I think he if you have these issues, you got to make sure to try and protect yourself as best you can. I don't know why Mike McDaniel should just told him don't run the football at all unless you absolutely have to, because something like this can happen. You get your 4th concussion. I mean, it's sad. Do I think he should retire? Probably, because at this rate, I mean, his brain is going to be Swiss cheese with CTE. He's not going to even know where he is by the time he's 45 or 50 years old. He's got money. The only main reason I think he could keep playing and probably will want to keep playing is because he can get much more if he plays 2 to 3 more years. But I mean, is it really worth it if you're not going to know where you are 20 years from now? I think it's really sad. And I got a lot of respect for Mike McDaniel. I think he's a very good head coach. But in my opinion, he said one of the stupidest things this week I've ever seen when he said, why are people bringing this up? They don't have Tua's best interest in mind. Yes, we do. If it was up to us, we'd want Tua to keep playing because he's a talented quarterback. I think he's a really solid quarterback. I would love it if he could continue his career with no issues. I just don't know if that's very likely at this point. I think if it's for what's in his best interest, I mean, even Mike McDaniel said it. You're the starting quarterback of your family. He said that to him on the field. And that was something that really stuck with me, in my opinion. He's not going to retire. He's going to keep playing whenever he comes back. And I hope to God, like Jason said, they got to put all the resources in the offensive line. This is your franchise guy, for better or worse at this point, right? You got to put all your effort in the offensive line. You got to tell Tua, never, ever lower your head. You can't help it. If a defensive lineman gets past the offensive line and hits you in the head, roughing the passer, you can't help that. That's a football play. But don't have your quarterback scrambling out of the pocket, lowering his head, and heavily increasing the chance of something like this happening, especially in a game that was already lost. Miami was never in that game. Buffalo was killing them from the first snap. It wasn't even a contest. And they lose them in a game they were going to lose no matter what. Now they got to go to Skylar Thompson. It's a complete disaster all around. It's really sad, honestly. I hope Tua can come back, play well, and never has these issues again, and he can live a happy rest of his life. I just don't know how realistic that is, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, he really hit the nail on the head there with that statement. I think when it comes to Miami, right, Skylar Thompson is your guy going forward. He's not a bad backup quarterback. And I think, Jason, what you said about having a conversation with him when the time is right, because after his stint on IR is done, he's going to want to come back right away. And you're looking the next 4 weeks, right, wondering, Miami's 1-1 right now, wondering, can they survive these next 4 games? Because we know the Buffalo Bills are a lot better than what people were talking about before the season started. I mean, they steamrolled the Dolphins. It was not close. Even with Tua in the game healthy, they were beating them up bad. The next few weeks, they're at Seattle, home against the Titans, at New England, and at Indianapolis. So that's 3 road games. Sure. Look at the quarterbacks they're going up against. Geno Smith, Will Levis, Jacoby Brissett, or Drake May, who knows, it'll probably still be Brissett, and then Anthony Richardson. None of those quarterbacks, Richardson, the jury's still out, are home run hitters, right? Those are games they could easily win. I think they're better than all 4 of those teams, even without Tua Tagovailoa, because the Colts are 0-2. They look like a mess in week 2. So, in all honesty, guys, there's no rush to bring Tua back. If they can sneak into the playoffs without him, be my guest. I mean, at this point, you're right. They got to draft like 5 offensive linemen next year for this guy. First off, Liam Eichenberg's playing out of position. He should not be playing right guard. He is a tackle in the NFL. Robert Hunt, they lost him in free agency. They did not replace him. They haven't replaced Pouncey since he retired. Teron Armstead is there, but he's getting old, guys. They need to fix that offensive line really, really badly. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as we head into our shots and chasers here. I really don't know how much we could discuss this issue without beating around a dead bush. We all agree, like, his medical concern is his number one priority, should be his number one priority, but the love of the game, right? I mean, Jason, how tough is it for a guy to walk away from football?
Hard. So hard.
Yeah, there's really a fine line between playing and not playing. It's a difficult position that teams have to make. So let's get into our shots and chasers this week. Noah, I'm going to start with you for the odd number games because Atlanta is number 7 on our list. So Minnesota 2-0, hosting the Houston Texans. Texans 2.5-point favorites on the road. We just saw the 49ers go in to Minneapolis and get beat. Who's taking it?
This is a tight game, man. First of all, I think a big key for the Vikings, Addison and Jefferson are both questionable. So I think it depends on how close to 100% those guys will be. Those are definitely 2 big pieces for that offense. Dallas Turner as well is questionable. I really like him on the defensive side of the ball. Joe Mixon questionable as well. I think if he plays, that's a big boost for Texans. I think this is a defensive slugfest. In my opinion, I actually have more faith in the Vikings defense based off what I saw for the 49ers, whereas with the Texans, they struggled against Anthony Richardson and the Colts in week 1, just barely scraped it out. And I know they looked amazing against the Bears, but that Bears offensive line is just horrendous, man. I mean, Caleb Williams was pressured on 80. I sent this to you, Tom, before the show. 80% of Caleb Williams snaps, he was pressured. That means 1 out of 5 pass plays, he was able to have a clean pocket to even try and throw the ball. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So I'd probably give the Vikings the edge defensively, but offensively, you got to give it to the Texans. So the question for me then is, do you have more faith in the Texans offense or the Vikings defense to win this game? And in my opinion, I think CJ Stroud is amazing. I think their top 3 receivers in Collins, Dell, and Stephon Diggs are great. Joe Mixon has stepped in very nicely, running the ball and catching it as well. He had a lot of really big catches in that Bears game. And defensively, Will Anderson's a stud. So I'll probably give the Vikings a very slight edge, but I think it's going to be a close game, man. I think it's going to be a defensive slugfest, but I'm going to pick the Texans to win this one 17-14.
Jason, what about you?
I'm gonna disagree. Literally 2 words. Justin Jefferson. I mean, you really can't it really doesn't matter who he has at quarterback. I think like Noah said, like the Texans have a really good team, and again, they looked good against the Bears, but that's the Bears. I feel like the Vikings have a little bit more of a fundamentally sound offense. And I just think Justin Jefferson has just been the best receiver in the league since his arrival, and he proves it every single time he steps on the field. So I'm gonna give a slight edge to the Vikings. I do like how they played against the 49ers. They could be like a low-key, like sneaky, like division, like winning team. The Texans have a great offense. I do like how they get Joe Mixon involved. They kind of use him all around. And that could be a test for the Vikings defense. I haven't seen too much of Aaron Jones on the Vikings. I want to see if they are going to get him a little bit more going. Like you guys said, Darnold's been great. Yeah, it's a close call for me, but I'm gonna give it to the Vikings just because I'm a big Justin Jefferson guy. So give me the Vikings. Let's go 24-21.
Yeah, so his status is day to day. They do expect him to play. So that's good news. We know he's a little banged up in that week 2 game. I think the Vikings defense is going to keep them in it. I also think 3-0 is too rich for a second-year head coach and a second-year quarterback this soon. I think they're both really, really outstanding at each of their jobs. The Vikings are legit, man. They held the 49ers to 17 points last week, and I can't believe I'm saying this. Jason, I'm going with Minnesota here too. I mean, they're home, and, Houston's favored by 2.5. Yeah, Vikings money line straight up here. That defense is legit. And seeing what they did to Brock Purdy, imagine what they could do to an offensive line that is not as good as San Francisco's. And they relied heavily on Stroud's mobility last year and his ability to extend plays and make those deep throws. Will Stroud even have a chance to make those deep throws? You got Dallas Turner, Jonathan Grenard, who is a former Texan, and Andrew Van Ginkel and Harrison Phillips up the middle. Those guys are legit. Blake Cashman, too, was also a former Houston Texan. So 2 former Houston Texans on that Vikings starting defense. I'm going to go Minnesota here in this one, but I would not be shocked if Houston finds a way because C.J. Stroud is a rare talent, and he could easily win them this game. So we'll see. Man, Vikings 3-0. I mean, just imagine that's with Sam Darnold. Crazy. All right, next up, Jason, we're going to start with you here on this one. The Philadelphia Eagles have lost their last 7 of 8 games on the continent of North America. Does that streak continue? Will Saquon Barkley drop another pass for $14 million a year? You tell me.
Oh, give me the Saints on this one. I'm not gonna lie. The Eagles probably are the better team, but I think they're hitting a little bit of a cold streak right now. I'm not gonna lie to you. Noah's gonna love to hear this. I was very impressed with the way the Falcons played them. Outside of the tush push and Saquon, they didn't really have much going for them on offense. Granted, I'm pretty sure AJ Brown was out. But still, you got guys like AJ Terrell, Matt Judon. Jesse Bates. I mean, they were all doing their job, and Jesse Bates on that last play of the game. That's why you signed him in free agency last year to make plays like that. I don't know. Like the Eagles haven't been like convincing to me this year. If you ask me, I think they got away from the Packers like just barely in that game in Brazil. They didn't convincingly win that game to me. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Saints. Like I said, Alvin Kamara looks like he's back in his prime form. Derek Carr is not playing bad either. Rashid Shaheed, underrated wide receiver. And again, Saints defense has just been playing out of their mind. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Saints on this one. And they're at home. Yeah, and you know how that Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Give me the Saints. I'm surprised a lot of people here. I'm gonna go with the Saints. Give me the Saints 31 and the Eagles 17. I think it's gonna be that type of game for the Saints.
Well, Tom, I really hate to say this, but I agree with Jason. I'm going with the Saints to win this game. I think if you asked me a week ago, I would have picked the Eagles. But just based off what I saw in week 2, I saw a Saints team that went on the road at Jerry's World AT&T Stadium, and they didn't just beat the Cowboys. They absolutely annihilated them. Rashid Shaheed, like Jason mentioned, back-to-back weeks with deep touchdowns. He's their deep threat. Derek Carr is killing it. Their offensive line looks strong. Alvin Kamara scored, 4 touchdowns. He looks amazing, both catching and running the football, by the way. Chris Olave is amazing. Juwan Johnson, underrated tight end. I mean, their offense just looks unstoppable right now. And like I said earlier, I think Clint Kubiak makes all the difference. They had Pete Carmichael last year. He was one of the worst play callers in all the NFL. You get Kubiak in, who was one of the, hottest attractions for an OC this offseason. They've looked amazing. And then you look at the Eagles, and I know very well about this. I watched that game last night very closely, and I saw an Eagles defensive line that got basically no pressure on Kirk Cousins at all. I mean, honestly, I think you could have plopped all 3 of us on that defensive line. We would have gotten the same amount of pressure as that defense did. I mean, it was just not good at all. Their secondary looked poor. Darius Slay got absolutely dusted by Drake London on that game when he touched down. I mean, it was embarrassing. And then he's laughing about it with Drake London after the game. That's a terrible look. Philly fans have got to hate that, man. But Jalen Hurts, inconsistent. Interception was terrible. Now, I will say he was slightly pressured on that play. It did impact the throw, in my opinion, but it was still not a good read. It was a very low percentage play, and Jesse Bates made a play. And Jesse Bates made another really good play early in the game as well, by the way, to break up a potential touchdown to Devontae Smith. He was amazing. But they just completely choked that game. And, Saquon Barkley dropped the pass. In my opinion, they lost the game because, number one, they didn't take a field goal in the first quarter on a 4th and 4. And number 2, they risked a passing play instead of running the football, taking 40 more seconds off, and it didn't work. I'm not impressed with the Eagles. I thought the Packers game, like Jason said, that was just a week 1 barn burner, last team that has the football wins the type of game. I mean, that was an offensive shootout. They have not looked impressive. The Saints have looked amazing. And by the way, it's in the Superdome, which is easily a top 3, top 5 atmosphere in the entire NFL. I'm going with the Saints to win this one. I think the Eagles will slow down the Saints a little bit more than the Cowboys did, but not by much. I think unless something drastic happens with the Saints, they're going to keep it rolling. And I'm going to pick the Saints to win this one 31-21.
Fun fact. Ready for this? The Eagles have not beaten the Saints in the Superdome since 2007.
Oh my God.
Been a long, long time. And a couple players you guys haven't mentioned yet. Alante Taylor at corner already has 5 tackles for loss this season and 3 sacks. He's a cornerback, guys. Paulson Adebo, a pick. Maybe we were wrong about Dennis Allen in week 1. There's still a lot of season left to be played, but I'll tell you something. They're partially 2-0 too. Yes, Kubiak's been great, but Dennis Allen, you got to give credit where credit is due. He has this team together. He has them in games. Chris Olave has been modest the first 2 games, and they're still winning. Kamara with 4 touchdowns. He's their bell cow offensively. Derek Carr, as Noah say, is no slouch either. He's a solid quarterback. He's not an elite quarterback, but he's a solid one. He's been a solid starter in this league since 2014. And typically quarterbacks for the Raiders don't last very long. He lasted very long, and he got a new deal with the Saints. And Rashid Shaheed, both you guys have said he's been phenomenal. A.J. Brown may or not play this week for the Eagles. It's a short week. Remember, they just played last night, and then they have to travel to New Orleans to play. I don't know if A.J. Brown's going to be ready. They did not get Jahan Dotson involved last night at all. It was all Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and even Grant Calcaterra, for that matter. The Saints are winning this one 31-13. We all picked the Saints to score 31 points.
Crazy.
It's going to be that type of game.
Yeah, hammer Saints -2.5. Please, whatever you do. That means take the Eagles, guys. Another pair of 2-0 teams here. The Chargers.
Forgot they were
led by Jim Harbaugh, and the Steelers, led by Mike Tomlin. You got probably 2 Hall of Fame head coaches, right? At least one on the college level and one on the NFL level. Steelers have only scored 1 touchdown all season, but they're 2-0. The Giants scored 3 touchdowns last week and lost. Justin Fields continues to start. Justin Fields is a former Georgia Bulldog, and he's still staying alive in the NFL. I'm sure you're happy about, Georgia quarterbacks continuing to stick around there.
Well, hey, man, I got to admit, I used to not really like Justin Fields because of the way he left UGA, but the more I watched him with the Bears and I kind of felt sorry for him, kind of started rooting for him again. And, obviously I got to watch him week 1, and I saw bits on Red Zone of their game against the Broncos. To me, that offense, it looks like, they're not doing anything explosive, obviously, like you mentioned, the lack of touchdowns. But what I've really been impressed with Justin Fields is he's taking care of the football. They're not making mistakes. They're running the ball well. They have 2 solid running backs in Najee and Jalen Warren. George Pickens might be their only true go-to guy, but they have other guys that can step in and do a decent job. Their defense is excellent. TJ Watt is the best pass rusher in I almost said college football, in the NFL. That said, they're not playing the Broncos or a dysfunctional Week 1 Atlanta Falcons offense in this one. They're playing a Chargers team that looks really good. That offense is running the rock, and I don't think that's what a lot of people expected from them. But I saw a stat earlier, guys. J.K. Dobbins is the only running back in NFL history with more than 250 career rushing attempts to average more than 6 yards per carry in his career. When he is healthy, he is an animal. And Gus Edwards is there as well, and he's no slouch either. Justin Herbert, really solid. And by the way, receiving-wise, remember when people were saying because he was dropping passes in camp and preseason that Quentin Johnston looks like a bust? He had 2 touchdowns last week. He is coming along nicely. They have Ladd McConkey as well. Josh Palmer, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, I believe he missed week 2. So I don't know if he's coming back this week or not, but that's another guy that they could add in as well at some point. I think this will be a defensive slugfest, but at the end of the day, I got to pick between one of the quarterbacks to win the game. I'm going Justin Herbert. No disrespect to Justin Fields. I think he's looked solid, but Herbert can go out and win you a game by himself pretty much. And that offensive line has looked ridiculous up front. They've invested a lot in it. Your boy Joe Alt, my boy Jamari Sawyer, they're killing it up front, man. Give me the Chargers to win this one 20-17.
Jason?
I'm gonna take the Chargers as well for the simple fact that both. I know our guy Pasquale was out there watching this, but the Steelers have had a pretty easy schedule. I mean, week 1 they had who did they have week 1? Denver. Week 2 they had was it New England?
The Steelers had Falcons week 1 and Denver week 2.
Falcons week 1.
Yep.
Which I think they escaped. Week 2 they had Denver, who hasn't really put it together yet. And I think their schedule only gets harder from here. I I think this is going to be a real test to see what type of team they're going to be this season. Usually they're like that middle of the pack, 9-8 wild card team. But I don't know. I'm just not impressed with what I've seen so far. I really genuinely think they've just gotten by in their first 2 games. They haven't won convincingly, and I think this is going to be a real test. And I do remember in our last show, I put John Harbaugh on. Wait, is it John or Jim? I forget which one. Jim Harbaugh on the hot seat for coaches. Because like I said, he did his thing with Michigan, but I wanted to see what he can do. And the Chargers, this is relatively the same team from last year. If anything, a few flips and switches here and there. They lost Keenan Allen, brought in Ladd McConkey. I'm pretty sure they lost an offensive lineman, drafted Joe Alt. They brought in 2 running backs in J.K. and Gus Edwards. And this is what I'm talking about. The way he's running the ball, this is the Jim Harbaugh effect. You know what I'm saying? The Chargers, they didn't make too many changes, but Jim Harbaugh's coaching ability is guiding them to where they are right now. And I think he might not outcoach Mike Tomlin, but he's going to coach to his level. And I think that's going to be the deciding factor in this game. Obviously, you got Justin Herbert, who I think, when healthy and with the right system, is a top 10 quarterback. So yeah, give me the Chargers on this one. I honestly do think it's going to be just like a blowout, because I don't think the Steelers are that team. I think this is a very fraudulent 2 wins they have, and I want to see how they get tested against another 2-0 team. So, and I'm a big Derwin James fan, so I think he's still one of the best safeties in the league, even though he had a little bit of a quiet season last year. I think he's going to shake back this year. Give me the Chargers. I'll go 21-7. I think the Steelers finally get a touchdown.
Okay, so the real reason why the Chargers are 2-0, there's 2 things: Harbaugh and their O-line. Their O-line, I mean, Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson, Bradley Bozeman, Joe Alt. I know Trey Pipkins and Jamari Salyer have both been getting reps at right guard. So, look, Justin Herbert, it's going to come down to, I believe his x-rays were negative. It's going to come down to if he's 100%, because he's another guy. He got banged up. I mean, everybody got hurt last week, guys. Everybody got hurt. Dobbins has been really impressive, 266 yards, 2 scores. But Alt and Slater going up against T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith will decide this game. And keep in mind, too, Patrick Queen is a stud. Although I will say, Noah, Quentin Johnston, he did play the Panthers last week. It might be the reason why he had 2 touchdowns there.
Could be.
But I will tell you, I was impressed with his play. I'm intrigued to see how he does this week against the Steelers. Hopefully he does well. But I think Ladd McConkey is clearly above Josh Palmer on the depth chart, and him and Quentin Johnston right now are getting the same amount of targets. So the question is, who's going to step up and be that number 1 receiver for LA? I don't know, man. I think Ladd might be taking that because of his volume. I think Ladd has better volume. He is a nice lad. And on the flip, you talk about Watt and Highsmith. How about Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack going at you, and Justin Fields? I mean, that offensive line for Pittsburgh is going to have to keep up, right? Broderick Jones is really going to get tested. I think the Chargers escape with a 3-point win on the road in Pittsburgh. Give me a final score of 22-19. Also, if you're a big fantasy football fan, I wouldn't pick up Quentin Johnston this week. Instead, I would pick up Jawan Jennings, mainly because Debo's out. You want to get a receiver with volume. George Kittle's a little banged up. I'm not sure if he's going to play. Jawan Jennings is the guy to get, folks. I know a lot of people are high on Quentin Johnston. I think he's a very good NFL receiver, but fantasy-wise, Chargers run the football, man. Chargers run the football a lot. So be wary of that. Next up, This game should have been the game of the week. It is not. The Ravens are 0-2 and the Cowboys are 1-1. I mean, this is the NFL, right? Every year shit changes. Cowboys are coming off a 44-19 loss to the Saints. Dak looked bad. The whole offense looked bad. I don't know what McCarthy was doing with the play calling on the sideline. I mean, the Saints clearly had his number. Ravens lost to the Raiders. I don't know how that happens either. And Noah, I know what you're going to say about that. Isaiah Likely was used a lot less in week 2. They were targeting Mark Andrews more. I thought they got away from what they did really well. And Derrick Henry, well, yes, he has 2 touchdowns through his first 2 games as a Raven. He only has 130 rushing yards on 31 carries. The O-line is not as good as it was last year. They lost Kevin Zeitler to the Detroit Lions. They're unfortunately for them, they're going to have to play a lot better this week if they want to beat Dallas. I forget who we're up to here, but I think, Jason, we'll start with you on this one.
This is a hard one for me because as much as I hate the Cowboys, the Ravens haven't just shown me what I need to see yet for me to give them like these definite wins. Like, I feel like this is a game they should win, but the way they've been playing, I just don't know if that's going to happen. Because if you're losing to a team like the Raiders, granted they have Max Crosby and a few guys on the D-line, but I think the Cowboys, Michael Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, I mean, I think that's a way better defense that you're about to be playing against. And if Derrick Henry's been he's been in the end zone, but he hasn't been, like you said, like there's been no volume with him. He's really just been getting a first down here and there and a touchdown when they're at the goal line. He hasn't really been like that rushing king that we've seen like 2 years ago. Ravens defense it's been a little shaky. It's been a little shaky. They didn't, for some reason, they didn't really rush that well in the first 2 weeks. Gardner Minshew actually, like, he wasn't pressured at all from what I saw. And I think the Ravens have the better quarterback for sure, but I think the Cowboys just have their game plan is just a little bit more figured out. The Ravens still look like they got a lot of question marks in that locker room. Is the number 1 tight end Mark Andrews or is it Isaiah Likely? I mean, I feel like Likely killed the Chiefs in week 1. I don't know why he didn't get the ball that much last week, especially against a defense like the Raiders. You brought Mark Andrews back into the picture. He did a little bit, but he wasn't a game changer. The Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb didn't really show me much against New Orleans. This is a hard one for me. I don't like the Cowboys, but I might have to give it to them. I think the Ravens fall to 0-3. Cowboys are at home. Yeah, I'm gonna take the Cowboys by a little bit. Also, Justin Tucker, I want to bring that up. Justin Tucker, I'm pretty sure he missed a field goal he's 1-7 on field goals from 50 yards or more. Since hitting the record-setting 66-yarder, he's 1-7 on 50 plus. I think that's something you got to watch out for because the Ravens do go to him a lot rather than taking a 4th down. Even though they have the backfield to extend their drives on down, they go to him a lot because of his reputation for kicking. But he's been struggling from 50 yards or further. I think that's something to pay attention to. Give me the Cowboys. 27, Ravens 21.
Yeah, I'm going the Baltimore Ravens on this one. I think if the Cowboys had kept it closer against the Saints, I might pick them because obviously the Ravens weren't impressive blowing the game to the Raiders, but the Cowboys just got killed. I mean, their running game is terrible. Rico Dowdle's averaging 3.7 and Ezekiel Elliott's averaging 3.5. I mean, I've seen a lot of Cowboys fans clamoring for Dalvin Cook to get some snaps, but if they can't block up front and they have this one-dimensional offense where they get behind and have to pass the ball, I don't really think it's going to matter. I have more faith in the Ravens running game than I do the Cowboys currently. Derrick Henry, even though he's had a slow start, he's still averaging over 4 yards per carry, and you're always going to be able to run the rock with Lamar Jackson there. I think it just comes down to, are they going to be able to get their passing game going? I really think they need to consider playing 2 tight ends on the field more. I think Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely can both contribute there, and I don't think they have, outside of Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, I don't really think Nelson Aguilar's that guy as a weapon. Defensively, it's tough because both looked very bad in week 2, but at least with the Ravens, they showed me something, at least in the first couple quarters, whereas the Cowboys got blown off the field the entire game pretty much. And speaking of Justin Tucker, Jason, you remind me of an interesting fact. I saw kickers this season from 50-plus are 35 out of 37, which is crazy when you think about that. But the 2 misses are both from Justin Tucker, man. He's the GOAT in my opinion, but he clearly does not have it like he used to. But I'm going with the Ravens to win this one. Cowboys looking complete disarray currently, and I still think I don't understand why they brought Mike McCarthy back. But, yeah, John Harbaugh's a way better coach in my opinion, and I think I'll coach McCarthy in this game. Give me the Ravens 27-17.
Ravens are 5-1 all time versus the Cowboys. They looked atrocious last week. Give me the Ravens. I don't see them going 0-3. I'm with you on this one, Noah. And next up, 49ers against the Rams. So, oh boy. This Rams team is really banged up, but so are the 49ers. The Rams are just in an awful place right now, injury-wise. Their number 1 wideout is DeMarcus Robinson. Tyler Higbee's out too. I mean, their number 1 tight end is Colby Parkinson. These guys are back end of the roster guys that are the best options for them. Despite Debo and CMC being out, do the 49ers really have a chance to lose this one? I don't know. Who are we up to? Noah, we'll start with you.
I think so. I've been very disappointed with the Rams. I thought they'd be a solid team. And, I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, you play the Lions week 1. It's a close game. Lions are a very good team. They got destroyed by the Cardinals. I mean, that game was over at halftime. It was like 31-3. Marvin Harrison Jr. with those 2 touchdowns. Elijah Higgins as well got one. Kyler Murray looking like Russell Wilson back there evading defenders to find a deep pass. They weren't even competitive. And like Tom said, Puka's on IR. Cooper Kupp gets injured. You got DeMarcus Robinson. Who else? Is Jordan Whittington going to step up? No Tyler Higbee. Offensive line, meh. Defense looked horrible. And then on the other side, you have a 49ers team who, you know, they struggled against the Vikings, but clearly it looks like the Vikings have something there. It's not like they're a terrible team. Kyron Williams, who was, you know, the fantasy football darling for a lot of people, averaging 2.5 yards per carry, and the Rams are averaging 3.2 as a team. That is horrible. Makes their offense completely one-dimensional. And let's just say against that 49ers defense, you do not want to be one-dimensional. Brock Purdy, I expect to bounce back. He was very poor against the Vikings, make a lot of terrible decisions. Their running game is still rock solid, and they have weapons. As long as now I saw George Kittle got injured. Hopefully he's good to go. He's an elite talent when healthy, but he always gets injured. I know he came back in that game, so hopefully he's 100% raring to go. Jawan Jennings, I know you mentioned him earlier, Tom. I like him as an underrated guy. He has 101 yards in the season. And obviously Debo and Ayuk, I mean, they have a lot of options. And defense is really solid. 49ers win this game 24-16.
Jason?
Considering all the factors, Rams a little bit hurt, 49ers a little bit hurt. All that aside or included, 49ers have the better roster by far. If you put their offensive 11 against the Rams defensive 11, I feel like they just washed them. They're just too talented. I feel like the QB conversation is very close in terms of talent, because I feel like Stafford is able to do a little bit more with less, if that makes sense. Purdy wasn't awful last week, but he could have been better. Debo out. Ayuk hasn't really got involved that much, which is making me a little bit mad because they gave him all this money, and I picked him in fantasy thinking that was going to be the motivation to get him going, but he still hasn't got it figured out yet. CMC, I'm not sure if he's playing this week. Yeah, you could. He's not playing this week, so they're going back to Jordan Mason. It's gonna be a close one. Both teams are just have a lot of holes right now. Obviously, Puka on the IR, Cooper Kupp just went down, so their receiving room is struggling. Kyron Williams isn't living up to the expectations so far. Considering all the factors, I just still got to give it to the 49ers just because they're the more talented team, considering all the injuries and what they have like as their number 2 and 3 options are still serviceable, rather than you have like the Rams who have guys that just barely made the 53-man roster are now the guys like for their offense. So, and the 49ers defense looks like the healthy side right now. They don't really have too much going on. So I feel like that's going to be what puts them over the top. So I'm going to take the 49ers probably in a blowout, if I'm being honest. Division rival game, Rams at home. I just think it's going to be a quiet game for them. Give me the 49ers 27-10.
Yeah, the difference for me here is Jordan Mason can still run behind that offensive line well. Brandon Ayuk and Jawan Jennings are better options than what the Rams have. Nick Bosa leads a stout defense with 2 sacks on the season. Fred Warner is an animal. I love that dude. He's a hard hitter, very fierce. Give me the 49ers. Give me a final score. I'm going to go a little lower here. I'm going to go 49ers 20, Rams 13. And that'll bring us to the Lions and the Cardinals. So 3 more games, guys, and then we're out of here. Detroit 101, Jason. Arizona 101. You thought Kyler Murray had the best quarterback performance in all of the NFC this past week. Could he do it again here at home against the team that probably should have made the Super Bowl last year if they held on?
Unfortunately, I don't think the Cardinals can do it again. Just not this week. At least we know for sure Marvin Harrison has arrived to the NFL now. He's here. He showed us flashes of Ohio State, what he was doing back there. James Conner, and I forgot the other guy's name. Benson, or is it
Trey Benson?
Trey Benson, FSU guy. Yeah.
Yeah, Connor and Benson, they're a good 1-2 punch back there. This is where, again, I just like the Lions here just because Dan Campbell, I like his style of coaching. I do think he's a better coach. Despite what I said last week, I do think overall Jared Goff is the better quarterback. Lions, obviously that O-line is pretty good. Jamison Williams, who I think if he hasn't been picked up in your fantasy league, which I don't know how, but he should be. If he is, then good. If he's not, get that guy ASAP, because not only is he a good receiver, but he's a good utility guy. What I mean by that is they get him involved in plays where if you think the play is broken, and just because of his speed and how dynamic he is, he takes the ball for like another 10, 20 yards. And he, without even getting a touchdown, can easily get you like 10 to 15 points. Yeah, he's been one of my favorite players since he came in. I like the way they use him in the offense. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, I think that's one of the best backfields in the league. Amon-Ra, obviously. He's been off to a slow start from what I've seen in week 1. He didn't really get involved that much, but week 2, he kind of picked it up. Despite the loss, he did pick it up. But I think the Lions roster is going to be with the deciding factor. Defense, I think Aiden Hutchinson had like 4 sacks in the last game.
Mm-hmm. He did.
Yeah, he went berserk. Brian Branch had a good rookie year. I feel like he's going to be a sophomore to look out for to really take that next level up to being like one of the superstars in the league. And not too much to say really. I just think the Lions, this is just a game that they should win if they want to live up to that expectation of being that almost Super Bowl team last year. I feel like this is a game you have to win if you're going to be recognized as that team. So I'm gonna pick the Lions in this one. Cardinals aren't a bad team, so I think it will be a little bit closer. So I'm gonna say Lions. I'm gonna say the Lions get about 24 points. Cardinals get 16.
My heart says the Cardinals, but my head says the Lions, man. I think they really should have beat the Bucs. I think that game was completely mismanaged by Dan Campbell, and Jared Goff threw way too many interceptions on promising drives. Amon-Ra, he was a bit quiet week 1. He was great week 2. And Jamison Williams, man, this guy is finally healthy, and this guy is going to become an elite deep threat. He has 4 big plays of more than 20 yards this season, which is tied for second in the NFL behind only the New York Giants' Malik Neighbors. He is also tied for third in all of the NFL for receiving yards with Chris Godwin, 200, only behind Nico Collins, who has 252 for the Texans. Him and Amon-Ra, great 1-2 punch. Oh, by the way, you also have Sam Laporta, who is an elite tight end. Great 1-2 punch at running back, Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. If Jared Goff just cleans it up, that defense, they can get pressure. Aiden Hutchinson, 4.5 sacks last week. Kirby Joseph is a beast in the secondary as well. I do like the Cardinals to keep this game close. I think Kyler's looked really good. Marvin Harrison Jr. has looked rock solid. James Conner running the rock as well looked really good. But I'm going to pick the Lions. I think they just have a better team, more talent, and they should have won last week as well, in my opinion, and they let that game go. I don't think they're going to do it twice, but I do think the Cardinals keep it close. They're clearly, at least so far, a lot better than people would have expected. Marvin Harrison has added an explosive element to that offense. Trey McBride as well. I forgot to mention him. Really good tight end. But the Lions win this game. Give me 24-21.
All right, yeah, we're going 3-0 for Detroit here. Goff did have 2 picks last week. Bad performance against the Bucs. They're a tough team. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 19 targets. Noah, as you mentioned, he was targeted very often. Sam Laporta only had 3. I think if the Lions are going to win, they have to try to navigate Laporta more into the offense. That cost me fantasy football this past week in 2 of my leagues, having Sam Laporta and him not being utilized. It was very frustrating. They want to establish both Gibbs and Montgomery early. Jamison Williams has been a stud. Aiden Hutchinson has 5.5 sacks through 2 games. And defensively, they could confuse Kyler on every single level. Brian Branch on the back line. Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone each have 3 tackles for loss. With Kyler, it's the Marvin Harrison Jr. show. The problem is Marvin Harrison Jr., all of his stuff came in the first quarter. They really didn't need to go to him after that. Can they go to him with volume is the question against a good defense like Detroit. That's my personal concern. I was impressed that the Cardinals did sack Matthew Stafford 5 times, but guys, let's be real here. The Lions arguably have the best offensive line in the NFL with a top 3 tackle in Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, Graham Glasgow, Kevin Zeitler. That's the best line in football. Lions win this game because of it. I think the Lions win by 4 to 6 points. Let's go with a final score of 27-21. Detroit. All right.
Here
Noah,
it is. I know what it is.
Here it is, man. Look, your Atlanta Falcons are 1-1 because you finally have a quarterback.
Yep.
This is a game last year. You said you would have lost the Eagles something like 30-9 if this were Desmond Ridder at quarterback. But you got rid of the Ridder, and in comes Captain Kirk to save the day. Isaiah Pacheco is out for the next 6 to 8 weeks with the fractured fibula, and the 6-week mark. So the 6-week mark is when the cast comes off. Fantasy owners, if you're targeting a Chiefs running back, do not grab Carson Steele. Grab Samaje P. Ryan. He is a PPR beast. Carson Steele had a fumble last week. He is the team's fullback. He should stay in that role. It'll be P. Ryan as the tailback until Kareem Hunt is ready, which might take a few weeks because he hasn't played any organized football all off season. So definitely target Samajay P. Ryan. If he's available and you want to try Carson Steele, sure, go ahead. But no, enough of me, and let's get to more of you.
Man, this one is tough. Like, it's one of those games. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said Chiefs in a blowout, pretty much. But after what I saw last night, look, I know people say the Eagles lost that game, but I mean, that's a game I've seen so many times over the years, Tom, where the Falcons would just lay down and die and not even be competitive. But they stayed in the game. They fought back. They won a game. They probably lose 99 times out of 100. But who gives, they won the game. That's all that matters. Kirk Cousins, he was poor for probably the first 2.5 quarters, I'd say. And then he gets that big touchdown pass to Darnell Mooney, and they start getting it going again, and he was excellent. I mean, perfect. The final drive. Bijan is an animal. I mean, this guy's just a natural running the football, and he can catch it as well. Algier is a solid number 2. Darnell Mooney, we finally have a number 2 wide receiver, which we've been really struggling to replace since Julio Jones, since we traded him, because it was basically just Calvin Ridley and a couple guys, and obviously Calvin Ridley went, and, but we got one now, I think. But defensively, been really surprised. Jesse Bates, animal. Judon has been a great addition pass rushing, which we badly needed because our pass rush was terrible last year. A.J. Terrell is a stud at corner. Caden Ellis, underrated guy, doesn't get a lot of attention at middle linebacker, but I really like him as well. I think this will be close, man. The last time the Falcons played the Chiefs, I want to say 2 years ago. I think they had even Mariota playing or someone. It was not someone spectacular. They kept it close for most of that game, and the Chiefs, I think, pulled away in the fourth quarter, but it was not a blowout like you would expect. I actually have more faith in the Falcons defense in this game than I do the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs have looked suspect defensively. I know they played Joe Burrow, but man, you're letting Io Sabas, kind of, a up and coming, unknown at tight end have 2 touchdowns on you. They needed some major flags to go their way to win that game. And the Ravens, I think, again, they were an inch away from 27-27 overtime. I think this will be a close game, but I am probably still going to pick the Chiefs. I think they have Patrick Mahomes, it's always hard to bet against him. I will say, though, he looked pretty mediocre against the Bengals, made some bad decisions, bad picks. But look, every time I pick against the Falcons, they win. So let's go with the Chiefs to win this one, 27-21.
Jason?
Yeah, Noah said a lot of the things I wanted to say, so I'm gonna keep my answer short. I am gonna pick the Chiefs, but Mahomes hasn't really looked like Mahomes in the first 2 games. He even had a pick week 1 against the Ravens. I feel like he's kind of going back to his play style, like when he had Tyreek Hill. Rather than going through all his reads, he's kind of just hoping for a big play and just throwing it down there. And that's what gets you picked off. Don't get me wrong, Xavier Worthy is a great athlete, but you cannot just chuck it down the field to him when he runs a vertical. That's not going to work, especially against a disciplined football team, which I think the Falcons are defensively more than the Bengals. So you definitely don't want to throw those this week. But I'm going to pick the Chiefs just because I don't know why. I feel like for some reason Mahomes plays more with a chip on his shoulder when he's away. He's a little bit more focused. Hopefully Travis Kelce can wake up. It's week 3. He's looking like he's not even ready to play football yet. And then one thing I wanted to say about Kareem Hunt, obviously he won't be ready for this game, but Kareem Hunt was actually on the Chiefs before. He has a good relationship with Andy Reid. He knows the system. So I think they're going to push to get him involved as soon as they can. And when they do, I feel like that's going to be a good not addition, but placeholder for them while Pacheco gets healthy. Like you mentioned, Carson Steele, young guy. He made a rookie mistake not holding onto the ball. But he did get a lot of big 4th downs that kept the Chiefs in the game. I do think what's really gonna ultimately lose the game for the Vikings, not Kirk Cousins, because he looked great in that second half against the Eagles, and I just think it's gonna be the pass rush that really gets to him because you got Chris Jones. They move him all over. They put him at tackle, third and long. They probably mess around and put him at end. I think the pass rush is gonna be what wins the game for the Chiefs. Offensively, the Falcons aren't bad at all. It's just the real question for me is, will Kirk Cousins have the time to make those plays? And if he does, it's gonna be a close game, I think. But if he doesn't, I'm not gonna be too hard on the Falcons. I'm just gonna say the Chiefs win the game, 27-20, just by a touchdown.
Chris Jones against Drew Dahlman. That's the matchup for me. Your center Noah's going to have his hands full because Kirk Cousins, the only time he's good outside the pocket is when he's running a designed bootleg. He's been very good at those throughout the course of his career. You need to protect this man. He is 36 years old. He is not a young cookie, guys. Yeah, Chiefs reunion. I remember I was hosting Review and Preview the day that Kareem Hunt got released with the elevator hotel incident back in 2017. I remember hosting the show that day, and then it happened live while we were on air. 7 years later, he's back. He's still in the league. Between Hunt, P. Ryan, and Steele, I'm not exactly sure who the number one guy is going to be. It sounds like it's going to be a running back by committee. Here's a fun stat. Noah, I think you'll appreciate this. Over the last 5 years, no quarterback has more fourth quarter / OT comebacks than Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has 15 fourth quarter or overtime comebacks.
There you go. And people say he chokes.
Mm-hmm. He's found the connection with Darnell Mooney. You expect to see Kyle Pitts get involved a little bit here.
Yes.
Personally, I think the Chiefs are going to win the football game. Oh, man, the bettors out there are going to hate me. Falcons only lose by 3, and here's why. Atlanta is home, and their defense is drastically improved, in my personal opinion. The Falcons have on paper, Noah, I think they have a solid offensive line, and that's why they went out and got Kirk Cousins. They also have a really solid defense. Jesse Bates back there. I believe you signed Justin Simmons.
Yep.
Recently. So you got veterans back there who can read Mahomes. And like Jason was talking about before, Mahomes is throwing the ball deep a lot lately. And, right now, Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy are the options. There's no Hollywood Brown. There's no Isaiah Pacheco. Will Travis Kelce get more involved? I have the Chiefs winning this one. Final score, give me 23-20, Kansas City. And that will bring us to our final game and the bonus game. I don't want to put this on the card, but I did. The Buffalo Bills, man. Is it safe to say through 2 weeks they look like the most I don't want to say dominant team in football because they had a close game with the Cardinals. But out of all the playoff teams from last year, they look the most consistent throughout the first 2 games, I think. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that looks more consistent than them, but they look really, really good. The way they manhandled Miami. Jason, I think we're up to you here. We'll start with you on this one. Does the lone New York team find a way to go to 3-0, or does Jacksonville take a happy flight back down to Florida?
Another hard one for me. Before the season started, I wasn't a big believer in the Bills. I thought they were going to take a massive decline, but it seems like they're playing better than last year. So far, Josh Allen's just one of those guys. I feel like really doesn't matter who he has, he's going to get his regardless. The defense was great against Miami. They absolutely wiped the floor with them. I don't know. I just have a question mark about this game because Jacksonville, I feel like this is the game they have to win before they get on that path of like, all right, when are we gonna get a win? Because I think they're another team that has a pretty tough schedule coming up. So if they don't I think this is a pretty even game. Like both these teams, like I don't think one team is way better than the other on either side of the ball. I think these are two evenly matched teams in terms of their offense and defense and how they play. They got two young quarterbacks that could throw the ball deep and can move when they have to. Two stud running backs, Travis Etienne, James Cook, who had a great game against Miami. I just think the difference maker is going to be the receivers in this one. Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas Jr. Like I think that's who should win the game, considering all the hits Buffalo took to their secondary this past offseason. I'm gonna go Jacksonville. I think this is the game they win. Give me Jacksonville. 24. Make that 23-19.
Tom, you want me to answer this one unbiased, or you want me to ramp it up a little bit?
It's the last game of the night. You can ramp it up a little bit.
All right. So I think Buffalo wins this game. I don't even know if it's particularly close. Josh Allen is the man. He's looked great so far, even though he doesn't have a true number one run receiver. I like Keon Coleman, but I mean, Shakir's their leading receiver. James Cook, my boy from UGA, has looked amazing so far, and Ray Davis is their number two. Looked really solid. On defense, Greg Rousseau looked really good. But on the other side, man, Jacksonville has no running game. They're past Brian Thomas. I don't think they have a threat at receiver. And Trevor Lawrence has looked terrible. And you know what? I think by halftime, Trevor Lawrence gets benched for Mac Jones, and everyone watching this game switches to the Commanders-Bengals game, because this game is going to end 35-13 in favor of the Buffalo Bills at home. Jaguars are not that good. The Bills are amazing. Give me the Bills in a blowout. Embarrassing.
Can I ask, respectfully, are you joking about the benched part? Like, in terms of like screw Trevor Lawrence, that's it? Or, I know that sounds silly, they just paid him a boatload of money. Or, this game is out of control, let's just keep Trevor Lawrence healthy for next week.
You know what, Tom? I'll let you decide which one I actually mean. I won't ruin the surprise.
Okay, so the Jaguars have lost 10 straight games dating back to last year. The Jacksonville Jaguars were 8-3 last year. 8-3. They finished the season 8-9. And now they're 0-2, guys. It's really, really bad. Trevor Lawrence has really struggled to find his groove. Christian Kirk, just 2 catches over the first 2 weeks. I will say, though, defensively, they're doing pretty okay. You know what? Your boy, Trayvon Walker, is there.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I wish I could post a picture up of you standing next to Trayvon Walker at Trevor Bank Field.
Big boy, man.
Yeah, he is a big boy. Josh Allen has been really, really good. But last week, numbers-wise, fantasy-wise, kind of sucked, to be honest. It really did suck. Buffalo just got so far ahead, they didn't need Allen to throw the football. James Cook had 3 touchdowns last week, rushed it in twice. That matches his season total for rushing touchdowns last season. That goes to show you how replacing Ken Dorsey with Joe Brady has really helped this offense excel. I don't know about you, Noah, but as a UGA fan, I think replacing Dorsey with the younger Brady can unlock the keys to success for James Cook in this offense. And my God, you got Greg Rousseau and Von Miller coming at you with Ed Oliver up the middle, Daquan Jones, piss-poor offensive line. It was so bad. They traded for Ezra Cleveland in the middle of the season last year. Jacksonville keeps this close. I'm not saying their season is over. It's not. They play in the AFC South. But Buffalo's going to win this game, in my opinion. Final score, I'm going to be a little bit nicer. Say Trevor Lawrence does not get benched. 28-17. Buffalo. Is that fair, or is that not fair, Noah?
I think you're disrespecting the Bills a bit, man. I think they could add 14 more points to that score.
Let me just bring this up.
Mhm.
All time, Jaguars are 10-9 against the Buffalo Bills. The Jaguars have won 3 out of the last 4 matchups, including the last 2.
It's going to be 3 of the last 5 after this.
All right. On that note, the Trevor Lawrence hate train is officially adjourned. I guess we're not going to Waffle House the next time we're in Jacksonville. Safe to say. But, guys, it's a really fun show with both of you. Noah and Jason, thank you both for coming back. Really appreciate it. You guys are a lot of fun to talk to. Noah, we've been doing this for a couple of years now. Great to talk college with you. And Jason, great to have you back for the NFL Insight, bringing a new, little younger touch to the show. It's definitely great to see. Get those different opinions out there on stuff. And I think we did a good job once again, guys.
Yeah, agreed.
Indeed. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. On behalf of Jason Edmondson and Noah Dog Dibler, or J2 Shifty and Noah Dog Dibler, I'm Tom Scavetta saying so long. You've been watching Review and Preview here on YouTube and Facebook Live. Have a good night, everybody.